All right. So let's get to our next segment, which is probably the most important segment tonight. It's the Something Happened Today segment, where we talk about injuries around the league, obviously around the NBA playoffs. And the worst thing could happen tonight, I would say, worst thing for the Warriors was them losing Steph Curry. Despite losing Steph Curry, they still got the win. But during the first half, it was interesting because I went back and looked at the play to see like if it was anything that he did to strain the hamstring, and he had a couple step backs and made a three, and then immediately went down on defense. He was even celebrating with the Warriors bench a little bit, and then all of a sudden he started moving, and like all of a sudden he just like kind of grabs his hamstring, like, ooh, that doesn't feel that good. Kind of does it again, doesn't feel that good, gets a rebound, starts dribbling up the court, and he's still kind of like grabbing at it. You could tell he's not moving correctly. Gives the ball off, kind of comes back, gets the ball, makes a runner. So he still makes a jumper after that, but then you can tell he's hobbling all the way back down. He's signaling to the bench to kind of come out. And then next play, he has to go back on offense again. And he kind of just stays in the corner. So you knew immediately right there was something serious. And obviously he did not come back in the game, right? And so at that point, I was just looking at like, is that more tightness versus strain based on there wasn't a significant play that set it off? So I think that is a positive, for being, when you look at severities of hamstring strains, like a grade 1 versus a grade 2, a grade 1 would be like the minimal tearing of the hamstring, and a grade 2 would be a partial tear. I don't think it's a grade 2. I mean, just based on how he was reacting. Usually there's some sort of big deceleration on a step that you just feel a hamstring pop and pull. That didn't look like it. He looked like he was just grabbing at it, felt a little tight. So I would say he's going to get an MRI tomorrow. They listed him as day-to-day. However, the big thing about the MRI was just determine the severity. Now, the hope would be that it's more tightness and there's no strain. And the MRI shows no strain, even though they diagnosed it with that already, just based on what the reporters reported.
Right.
That would be the hope. You see the MRI, there's no strain, and he's day-to-day. Right? Or if they see a grade 1, that the typical healing time for a grade 1 is about 1 to 2 weeks. So either way, I think he is in line to miss the next couple games, right? So they currently play every other day up until after game 5 is when they kind of get a big break between game 6 and 7. So the hope would be that the MRI does not show a grade or a strain. It just kind of it essentially would become like tightness. And then he would just need some time to heal. And you don't want to rush back because you can always make it worse. Either way, at this point, there's been some sort of injury to the hamstring, which can be made worse by playing. Right. So, man, I'm trying to be optimistic about it, but with the Warriors winning, that was the best thing they could have done.
Yep.
Right. Because that's going to help him get some rest. And the hope would be to treat it 24/7 and then get him back for the second half of the series if it goes that long. Like if you had to go to a game 5, 6, or 7. What do you say, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the play, didn't see exactly like you mentioned, like where it happened, but I saw him like hit a couple of shots and he pointed at the bench. And so when a guy takes himself out, we know something's not right. And he obviously went to the locker room, and regardless of how big the game was, he wasn't good enough to return. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a bit of concern. I think, like you said, them winning game 1, I would almost guarantee he doesn't play game 2. And then we'll see about games 3, 4, 5. And so, yeah, it's bittersweet, especially if he does have to miss a few games, because let's be honest, like that could be the series. I know they ended up winning today, but I guarantee you as the series goes on, I think Minnesota, who was awful today, but I think their talent will show up, and it'll catch up to them if Curry's not in ultimately. And so I think they're a little bit on a high today, coming off of Game 7. While you're kind of were getting situated, I was talking to everybody about how I was completely wrong. I thought the 2 Game 7 winners were going to really struggle in Game 1. I thought there was going to be 2 rested teams that were going to probably come and win the games pretty easy, but it was the exact opposite. It was 2 teams that maybe were still kind of like on a high, right? Against, there's always that rest versus rust question. And so, I mean, I'll be honest, Minnesota didn't play well Game 5 against the Lakers. I mean, Lakers were just, I don't even want to talk about them anymore, but they just, I mean, they're destined to lose that series. So it was a little bit of a carryover, honestly, from that game. And so I think it is a little bit of a concern. I'm like, I don't even know what Minnesota team I'm watching out there, but yeah, in terms of like, obviously something happened today. We'll be interested to see what the severity is of it, because it is a game-changing injury, and they obviously need Curry to, I believe, win the series, and definitely moving forward beyond this round against Minnesota.
Yeah, I will say one thing for the Warriors: they are a deep team, and we've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. As far as they can go 11 in a game, and it's in the playoffs. And typically, when you think about playoffs, you're playing like that 8-9 man rotation. I mean, they have a guy like Kuminga that like barely plays most games because they're stacked, right? And they can't fit him in there. So you at least can fall back on that, especially with just having a talent like Jimmy Butler. I mean, if they didn't have Jimmy Butler, this would be just a totally different team, and I don't even think they would be in the situation that they're in. And so I think now that they're able to fall back on a player like Jimmy who can take over a game, and you still have, the Pazinskis, you have Draymond, obviously. So you do have a lot of talent that you can choose from. And even having Peyton off the bench, right? That you can get minutes from, you can get defensive minutes from players like that is going to be huge for them moving forward.
Man, it's so untraditional or non-traditional. I mean, we know it. We always talk about it. Playoffs, that bench. You said 8-9 players. That's probably like on the high end. A lot of times it's 7 players, 7 guys, and so. Yeah, this is like out of the norm where you got 11, maybe even 12 guys that play. And so
for sure.
Yeah, man, it takes like a good coach like Steve Kerr to be able to orchestrate it and kind of plug in the right players at the right time. Because not any coach would be able to do the things that he's doing in these playoffs. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll keep you updated on that. I'll be tweeting out some stuff tomorrow, I'm sure, when we find out. And then also we'll have the pod up, and if we need to come on to kind of talk about it, we will. We'll keep you updated throughout any news that happens with Curry. And then now, I've talked about it in the previous show, but I wanted to kind of get into the Cavs players, because that's obviously a huge concern for the Cavs moving forward. They have 3 players that were out today: Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and DeAndre Hunter. Right. So we're looking at, when we think about Darius Garland, he has a big toe sprain, and we all know that he missed Game 4 in the first round, missed Game 1 and 2 so far. And from what all the reports are, that it's pretty significant, and it would be a type of injury that he would be out multiple weeks. So that's the concerning thing, because at this point they're down 0-2 going back to Indiana. They don't have much rest in between games. And there's not a whole lot you can do for the sprain. Like, you are trying to treat it as best you can to get him to be out of pain. There are some modifications it can do in the shoe, which will get less like you can get it to like, so it's not extending as much, right? So you can get some comfort in the shoe, so he's not in as much pain. But even that is his explosiveness, or just ability to like move quickly, especially on offense or defense, will be diminished, even if he returns for Game 3 or 4. And it's still not really in the cards, or we haven't heard like there's a positive that he will be back in Game 3. So I'm not too optimistic with Garland right now in this series, especially with them being down 2-0.
Yeah, Garland, I know we talked about the other night, with the toe injury, like similar to like football players with turf toe. Whenever you hear those injuries, like especially during like the regular season, you feel like, oh, they just have it all season long. And to really think that he's gonna just all of a sudden come back and be like even close to what he can be, it's naive. And so yeah, man, it sucks. It's like that teams are going to win or lose, right? Obviously, there's always a winner, there's always a loser,
Mm-hmm.
but you
Mm-hmm.
just always hope that most teams are healthy, and it's brutal right now for some of these ball clubs because this is game changing. I mean, there's three guys that the Cavs have out who are big contributors to this ball club, and yeah, man, it's tough to see.
Yeah, you don't want to see it, especially this time in the playoffs. But that's what happens. I mean, with the physicality in the playoffs, and there's certain things and injuries that happen, and the crazy thing is those players will try their hardest to play. So don't doubt if some of these guys get back earlier than they should be, because if it was a regular season, they would not be back that fast. So when I give you guys like timeline of healing, that's just a normal timeline, right? In the NBA. In the playoffs, you got to up that. They usually try to get back a lot faster, which is it's great for your team, but at the same a risk for them because they can get further injuries, right? In particular with the hamstring, it's always in the back of my mind when I think of players with hamstring strains that try to come back early, is that the hamstring is the second protector for the ACL. There are some fibers that kind of attach into there, and it acts as a protector for the ACL, right? So when you have a strain and you're weaker in that muscle, you're more susceptible to an ACL injury in the knee. So that's why I always worry, like when players kind of come back too early. I hate to give this example, but Klay Thompson in the finals, right? He had a hamstring strain, and he tried to get it out and come back. And obviously he tore his ACL in the finals. And you never want to see that. It's just more the reality of when there's a tissue that's injured that can lead to further injuries down the road, right? So we kind of talked about that with Dame when he came back, right? So it was like, yes, he's coming back from DVT, which is something that's totally different, but he wasn't conditioned. And, a couple games later, he tears his Achilles, which he had a previous issue from last year's playoffs. So you already had some degeneration there. And then you team it up with him not doing any cardio, him not doing much for about a month because of the DVT, and then he comes back. So there's just always that risk. Yeah. I mean, and that's what they sign up for. That's what they play for, and they're willing to take that risk.
Yeah, that's great insight. Yeah, I for me, and I know probably a lot of people didn't realize that that it was that it's kind of a protector of the ACL, and so I think you've always been a proponent of like one injury could always lead to another because you kind of favor that injury and you maybe move a little different than you normally would. And in kind of going back to a guy like Steph Curry, I mean, his movement without the ball is so big for him, and he's like you might think like, oh, he's a 3-point shooter, he could just kind of sit behind the three-point line, but he's so much more than that. He's not a stationary player at all. And so obviously I know we're talking about the other guys, but yeah, with Curry, he's going to have to really be cautious, especially with everything you just told us right now, because that's pretty scary.
Yeah, for sure. And then you get back to the last two Cavs players. We got Evan Mobley, who has an ankle sprain. They haven't really talked about the severity of it. Out of those three players, I see him likely getting back faster than anybody else. It's something that at least you can put a brace on or a tape, and you kind of got to play through the pain. DeAndre Hunter, I'm a little worried about because he dislocated his right thumb. So that's his shooting thumb. That's his hand, when he's dribbling, he's playing defense. Anytime he gets banged up, it's going to be just super painful. So he'll have a significant wrap on that if he comes back or returns in this series. So either way, when they do return, they are going to be limited in a fashion, and it doesn't look encouraging for the Cavs at this point, being down 0-2.
Yeah, no, I think if they had everybody come back, it would be tough. And knowing
Yeah.
that most are not going to come back and are not maybe even close to 100%.
Mhm.
Like we've kind of been mentioning this all show, it's not looking good for Cleveland.
Yeah. All right. So